Yes, it's been an incredible journey. It started in March last year because I'd been told 6 years ago that this was going to happen, and
Oh, really?
then I was told 2 years ago they were nearly there because they had Trump in power. And then I was told in November of 2019 they were ready to do it in 2020. And what they were referring to was collapsing the world's economy for a global financial reset.
Right.
Um, and this came directly from a US ambassador that I know very, very well, and I've known for 20 years. And to them, it was just like, it was almost like a game that we're going to shut down the world's economy for a financial reset. I was completely oblivious at that time that there were two resets in play. And it was only really um, luck more than judgment and probably God's guidance that I actually land up on the right side, on the decent reset, and not the dirty reset. But it wasn't until March and April when I got back in contact with him and I said, "So you've used a virus to shut down the world's economy?" And he just burst out laughing. He's gone, "Yeah, you wouldn't believe how easy it was." Um, and I was like, "Wow!" And so my videos were starting out. I do a 10-kilometer walk most mornings, and I was holding my phone and telling people, "Don't panic, don't panic. This virus is a load of rubbish. It's been done purely for a financial reset." This was in March last year. It's all been shut down for a global financial reset. And I went from 37 subscribers to about 100 in a week. And then I went to 1,000 in 2 weeks. And then Lee Hemington contacted me and said, "I just loved your message. I love what you're saying." Because he said, "What you're saying makes sense." He said, "Would you mind if I promoted you?" He said, "Because I had a business promoting companies online and it's just died during this collapse." And I said, "Yeah, go on then." And we just did it. We didn't do it for money. We did it for getting the truth out there. And we went from 1,000 to 10,000 the following week, just by telling the truth and what was happening. And I was told then in March, April time, I said, the ambassador said, "Right, we're going to use a virus first, then a vaccine, then 5G, then riots, and then an alien invasion." He said, it's all mapped out, it's all planned out to collapse the world's economy. And this is all a distraction, this is all a smokescreen, so we can reset the world's economy and change the banking system. Now, for the last 4 years, I've been working on the quantum financial system. Um, so I know, but I'm under an NDA, so I can't talk about a lot about it. All I can say is I'm involved with moving precious metals around the world to back up the currencies. That's all I can say. The rest of it
Okay.
is I've been working on for 4 years. I've been moving currency around the world for the last 20 years for governments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which I can talk about, which gave me an insight into what was going on. And I've moved billions and billions and billions of dollars around the world in cash on private jets. And I've written in my book about that, where before I met my wife 10 years ago, my private jets were full of cocaine, champagne and hookers. And that was great fun moving money around. Nowadays, I've got diplomats and bodyguards, and it's pretty damn boring.
Uh,
It's not quite the same, but the information James, you'll understand that very often when I'm talking to these guys, it's not sort of they just willingly give you information, just chatting for 6 hours on a private jet about loads and loads and loads and loads of things. And then suddenly you think back and go, God, that was valuable. At the time, it was just a conversation. Shutting down the world's economy, when he told me 6 years ago when we were on a flight from Africa into Dubai, from Accra in Ghana, he just said to me, "We're going to shut down the world's economy." And I was just like, "Yeah, whatever. Of course you are." And it was just a joke. And then 2 years ago, Charlie, we're nearly there now. We've got Trump in power. Then November, the critical thing was we've got the UK out of the EU, so we're ready to go. That was a critical point. We've got the UK out of the EU, so we're now ready. So that was
what you
critical.
mean? Are you saying, Charlie, that the black hats, let's call them that, wanted to get Britain out of the EU in order to further this great reset?
I don't know if it was the black hats or the white hats, but they needed the UK away from the Nazi states of Europe, as he referred to it, before we collapsed the EU. That was his
Oh,
words.
I see.
Because they
Which,
referred,
Charlie, but
yeah.
this is all desperately interesting to me. But I can imagine that some of my my listeners are just going to be going, well, like, who the hell is this guy? Number one, what's his background? Why? Because you seem very level-headed and straight talking. I mean, a bit like I started watching Simon Parr videos recently, and he comes across as very plausible. But I've met loads and loads of con men in my time, and one of the defining characteristics they all have in common is that they're all incredibly plausible, because otherwise they wouldn't be a successful con man. So just tell me a bit about you, about what your background is and how you got to this point.
I retired from mainstream work. I've documented everything in my life story book, in my autobiography, which is out now. My foundations were that I was born in a religious cult called Plymouth Brethren.
Oh, yeah.
And I had an arranged marriage at 18. I had 3 children by the age of 23. I left the religious sect when I was 23, and my parents completely disowned me for doing that. And I regard now in hindsight that from the age of 23 to 25, I went from through a period of my life where I was completely lost and in the wilderness. I didn't know what was true and what was lies. So that's where when I was 23 is when I understood that what I'd been educated, what I'd been taught was not accurate. I'd been born and brought up to believe the end of the world was coming by the year before the year 2000. And of course, when it didn't happen, that changed a lot of my thought process. And there was a lot of things.
But I imagine they doubled, didn't they, with their predictions? They well, it's still going to happen, but worse next time.
Exactly. There was always this living in fear of the end of the world coming. You didn't need to concentrate at school. You didn't, even stupid things like going to the cheapest dentist because you didn't need to worry about your teeth because the end of the world was coming, and all these sort of things. And then I went on a journey, and you probably understand this, that I got myself into trouble when I was 24, and ended up going to prison. And I got myself in trouble by not paying maintenance to my ex-wife because the child support agency came after me. And I didn't know what was going on in the world. I had no moral compass. I had no sense of responsibility to my children and my wife because I was rebellious at that stage against a system that had corrupted my thought process. And I was all over the place. And I went to prison in Exeter for 3 months for not paying maintenance. And that made me very angry inside as a person. And I connected with the wrong people when I was inside. And I ended up going back into Exeter prison 6 months later because I was working with people inside there to print credit cards and £20 notes. It's all documented. And I was a complete lost soul. I didn't know what was right and I didn't know what was wrong. And it took me probably 10 years of complete loneliness where I didn't connect with anybody because I was trying to establish truth. And that stood me in very good stead for right now, because I know what it's like to be completely lost and being brainwashed into stuff. And we're all programmed. It doesn't matter what way you look at it. We're programmed. You just hope that the programming is accurate. And I've focused a lot of my videos on trusting our own intuition. And I've always said on my journey, if you believe in God, ask God. If you believe in Allah, ask Allah. And if you don't believe in either, ask your mother or your grandmother to reset your moral compass so that you can trust your intuition. You don't have to believe me. The title of my book is I'm Just Charlie. My journey is I'm not the Messiah, I'm just Charlie. This is the research I've done. This is what I've found. I suggest you go and find out for yourself the truth. You don't have to believe me. And this is where I think, instead of preaching at people saying, this is the way, this is the truth, this is the light. No, this is what I've found for myself. Why don't you go and find out for yourself? And a lot of people sadly don't have the time or the inclination. And my daughter's one of those who doesn't believe a word that I say. But she's got 3 jobs. And she's literally comes home at night, has her food, goes to bed, gets up in the morning, starts all over again, become a slave to the system and doesn't have the time to do the research that I'm blessed to be able to do. And it's been one hell of a journey. I said this right at the start. I had the 4 corner pieces of the puzzle. I knew that this was a stitch up. I knew it was for a global financial reset. I had no idea about what route they were going to take to do it. I had no comprehension of it. I've had to do hours and hours and hours. I've done over 5,000 hours of research. Now you'd know this because I know you've written a number of books, and I know that you write articles in a number of papers. And I have a lot of respect for honourable journalism. I have a lot of disdain for people who've ignored so much factual information to do with what's going on right now and just turned their back on it. I love honest journalists who are prepared to go and find the truth out. I've met a lot of journalists in Syria who are setting up scenes to film for television, which are completely fictitious. That makes me angry. And yet I know, Jill Dando, classic case of a woman trying to find the truth out about the paedophilia in the BBC, ended up losing her life over it. That's incredibly sad. But there should be other journalists going out there and saying, the problem is that if you start tapping that door, somebody's going to come around and shoot you. That's the problem. It's a very evil world that we live in. But I'm 60 years old. I lost my firstborn son 11 years ago in a car accident. And I've lost my fear of death, because when I got threatened by certain people about what I was saying, I said, that's fine. You can come around and kill me. That's fine. I can go and be with my son. And that scared the shit out of them, because they're used to people being scared of death. I'm not. So the threats I've had, and I've had plenty to shut me up, from the secret services in the UK, MI5 and MI6, and they know exactly who they are. One of which I know personally, and he's really, really pissed off with me because he can't break me down, because I said, he said, I need to get psychiatric help. And I said, I don't think I need psychiatric help when I'm delivering the truth. And I said, if you find anything that I say that is slightly inaccurate, I welcome your information, as long as it's based on fact that I can verify as well. And with all my information, I can point you to a place to find the facts to back it up.
So just fast forward a bit to when you were starting shipping this currency around the world. What was your job exactly? How does that work?
Well, I was in the hotel and holiday business for most of my life. So I used to change people's money when they're on holiday. That's where it started. And when I retired, people asked me to move money. I had a lot of people in Spain, where I live, who would say, I've got a lot of cash here that a lot of people don't trust the banking system. You'd be amazed how many people don't. And they said, look, I want to buy this, and how can I do it? And I said, fine, if you give me the cash, I can put it into the bank for you, because I'm different to most people. I can actually bank large amounts of cash, which most people can't.
Right.
But I know how to do it. And I know how to do a declaration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all a paper trail to satisfy people. As long as you can provide proof of funds, history of funds and source of funds, and do it correctly, there's no issue. But people just don't know where to start.
Right.
And that's what I'm very, very good at. And there's been many, many occasions where, for an example, a government wants to deliver a certain amount of US dollars. So first things first, I have to get clearance from the Federal Reserve, because the currency belongs to America, even though it's coming from Africa. It's a US dollar, so I have to get their consent to move it. And then when I move it, the government will provide the documentation for the receiving government to receive it. But it's done outside of the banking. Now I know exactly why, because they don't want it to leave a paper trail as such. They work together between governments, and they don't want it going through the central bank. And I showed a video yesterday. Somebody sent me a picture of, I think, about 500 million in cash, and it's all in UN aid boxes. So it's the United Nations aid. That's what it was for. But politicians have stolen that money, and they want it put into the bank, and they want the account set up offshore, and the money to go into there. Now, from my point of view, if it's aid money from the Red Cross, UNICEF, or United Nations, then I'll turn my back on it and I won't touch it. Yep. If it's come from a government and I've got a government documentation to back it up, so it's gone through the receiving government, then there's enough paper trail there for me to be able to justify moving it to another government. for what, it's not my business what the money's for. As
Yeah.
long as the sending government and the receiving government are happy with it, which they always are, because it's an agreement done behind closed doors, and then I'll get the payment paid up front for the private jet. They'll sort out their own customs clearance on departure, and I'm always responsible for arrival, because we used to land it in Dubai, and I know the head of customs, I know the head of CID, and before we even take off, I've cleared all the paperwork that I'm bringing in money, and they scan every single pallet that comes in to make sure there's no drugs, no weapons, no alcohol. In fact, the alcohol one's interesting, because you'd expect drugs and weapons, but alcohol they're very strict on in the Middle East.
Yeah, yeah. So, gosh, there are so many different rabbit holes one could go down here. Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Where are you on Trump at the moment? Do you think has he got a plan? And are we going to see something soon?
Donald Trump has very, very clearly got a plan, but it's not about identity politics. Will tell you it's between Trump and Biden. You pull back from that, and it's not. It's between the USA and the CCP, and you pull back from that, and it's between God and Lucifer, Satan, the devil, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
God, for some reason, has chosen Trump to be his wingman, if you like,
His
to get
vessel.
to get us through this process. And this is why I've been so peaceful on this journey. I've heard a lot of factual stuff, but one thing I've done is connect with my inside and ask God to guide me on whether it's truthful or not. And I also asked him to guide me on how I deliver the message. And that's why I'm probably very, very peaceful about what's going on. That I know that this is an awakening. We're going through a great awakening. I was involved in the financial side of the quantum financial system. So moving gold and precious metals around the world to back up the currencies around the world, because that's the world we're moving away from the old SWIFT system, the old fiat currency backed by nothing, fresh air, into a gold-backed currency, a digital system. There will still be cash, there will still be notes, but the banking system will be done digitally on a blockchain technology, quantum technology, to provide clarity and security. So it'll be very, very clear to see where the money's going from, where it's come from, and it will have a digital ID with it on its whole journey. So as an example, and we were talking about this yesterday, if I'm buying a house from you, James, and you've got your title deed on a token, if you like, on the quantum system, and you've built an extension, the extension adds onto the token, and then I've got the money, and the money literally it goes into like a pocket, if you like.
Like escrow, is it?
It's similar to an escrow, but it's far better than that, because there's 1 trillion frames a second on the quantum system, and every transaction gets its own identity and pocket, a little pouch, if you like. And once your title is in there and my money's in there, and they match, then they swap over. So I get the title and you get the money. It's a it's a beautiful system with complete clarity, and it does away with so many people's jobs, because it's so clean.
I can see that.
It's so clean and clear. So that's the world we're moving into, and that's what I've been involved in. But my journey has taken me down many, many rabbit holes to see what's happening. I'm now in regular contact with people that are part of the legal team around Trump, and they're very, very relaxed and very, very calm. What we're going through right now is pantomime. The hard work has been done. The war has been won, but it's now part of waking people up to what's happened. Because of what happened in the past, with the fact that John F. Kennedy was killed when they tried to change into this system. And then obviously on September the 11th was the second time they tried to move into this new financial system, which is fondly known as NESARA or GESARA, NESARA being in America, GESARA being for the rest of the world. And for anybody, they can Google that, they can read it for themselves, they can understand it themselves. There's now plenty of information out there. But I spoke to somebody again this morning who'd never even heard of the word NESARA. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But now you can do your own research into it and establish your own view on it, rather than me tell you what NESARA is all about, because I've done 20 or 30 videos about NESARA and GESARA. And I found it a lot better for people to because it's simple to research. And then a lot of people go, wow, that can't happen. But they forget the fact that we've been enslaved to debt for all of our lives.
Yes, just whet my appetite though, or rather whet the appetite of my viewers. I think probably I've heard of Nisara Jisara, but I think a lot of people haven't. This is a lot of my. You've followed my career to a degree. You
Yes.
know that I started out very much in the mainstream. I had a job at the Telegraph. I started off on the Telegraph when I consider it to have been a proper newspaper. I had a column on the Spectator, and I remember in the comments below, there are lots of people sort of pouring scorn on me as being kind of establishment and like you just don't know. I mean, for example, not so long ago, I was endorsing Boris Johnson. I was thinking he was the only way we were going to get Brexit, and that was my preoccupation. It's only in the last really 12 months that I've really started disappearing down the rabbit hole. And a lot of my former journalistic confrère are now looking at me thinking, I know they are, what's happened to James Delingpole? He used to be a stand-up regular guy writing about sensible things, and now he's bloody weird. And so I've got both audiences. I've got the sort of the people who like the direction I'm going in, and people are going, James, what's happened to you? So for the benefit of those James, what happened to you people, just give me a brief kind of back of a fag packet thing on Nisara Jisara.
Very, very simply, for anybody that wants to start the journey, I always start it with the UK and most of the world, if not all of the world, are currently under a law of the sea. Whether you want to call it maritime law, admiralty law, civil law, it was a law that was created so that, and you, without going into detail, watch the movie Straw Man. You'll see that we're all classed as commodities. And when we were born, we were certified lost at sea. And a fake birth certificate was created, or a birth certificate was created as a corporation. That's why your name is written in capital letters on your birth certificate. It's highly unlikely you'll ever see your birth certificate. You'll see a copy of it. If you actually get your birth certificate, if you actually manage to, and turn it over on the back, you'll be gobsmacked to see stamps from all over the world where you have been traded as a corporation. And when people wake up to the fact that you're not actually a living soul, but you're a corporation, especially if you've gone through your life flat broke, and the fact that they've used your name and title for millions of pounds worth of trades, it'll make you pretty angry. So that's the first place to start. Donald Trump wants to take us away from the law of the seas, maritime law, admiralty law, back to common law. Common law is very, very simple. I don't hurt you, you don't hurt me. I don't steal from you, you don't steal from me. I don't kill you, you don't kill me. That's the fundamentals of common law. That's the law of God, the law of the land. And that has the highest standing in law. And what the world is under right now is under, in the UK, maritime law. There you go.
Yes, that wasn't the security services. That was in fact your electrician who might be working for the
Yes.
security services.
Yeah, no, I'm building a studio downstairs, so I've got all the builders in the moment. So going back to Nisara, yeah, and the law of the seas. When you get into common law, common law in the UK, you become a living being over against being a commodity. And a lot of people are completely unaware of this. That the law of the seas is by consent. So if the public don't consent, the police, and this is where some people don't understand, when a policeman will ask you, do you understand? It means, do you stand under me? So if you have to consent to them. So that's why the police in England say, do you understand? Because they need your consent. And it's a play on words. So that's the basics of the start of Nasara. Now, the bits that everybody loves about Nasara and Jassara is the fact that it takes us from a world of enslavement to debt, because the whole idea that we have mortgages, which if you know what the word mortgage means, it's death pledge. The translation of mortgage is death pledge.
Yeah.
And they've got you tied into them. And if James and I had thought of it first, it's the biggest scam in history, that they can just print money and give it to you, but they want it back. Not only do they want their money back, but they want it back with interest and tax. And that's just enslavement to debt. And you go, well, I just accept that because that's how it is. No, that's not how it should be. It's not how it should be. And Donald Trump is taking us away from this world of enslavement of debt into a world, into God's world, which is about humanity. And this might be a bit much for some people to understand, but we're coming out of darkness into light.
Yeah.
God created the world, and he didn't want us to be enslaved. That's not what he wanted. That wasn't his plan. That's Satan's or Lucifer's plan, to enslave the world. And we've been enslaved all of our lives.
When did the rot set in? When did we become subject to this maritime law? Well, because presumably there was a time when we weren't.
That's correct. The fundamentals are, it goes back many, 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 many years. And it's very difficult to work out exactly when the transition was. And I think most of the people, if you do your research now, you can find out that the people that controlled it, most people think it was the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the George Soroses. Well, they're basically just puppets. It goes back to the Phoenician families. And I think there's 13 Phoenician families. And that's when Donald Trump made mention, I think it was in April or May, that he'd taken the head off the beast. And that's when he'd actually arrested the Phoenician families, the 13 Phoenician families, out of Venice. And this is why Italy was hit very hard early on, so they could take down the Phoenician families in the Vatican. That was taken out in April, May time. And that was one of the 3 pillars that was needed taking down. So that the Italian part was the Vatican and the Phoenician families, the money people, if you like. The wealthiest of the Phoenician families is the payeurs, which is the interpretation of the word paymaster. And their net worth was seized was 34 quadrillion, to give you an idea of their wealth.
But this is so esoteric that people are just going to be going, whoa. So you're saying that there were actual arrests of people that presumably, have we even heard of these people? Do we know their names?
No. Well, the only one that I know the name of is the payeurs, which is the paymaster, the top family. But the 13 Phoenician families are the people who've controlled the world for hundreds of years, if not going back thousands of years, but certainly hundreds of years. They've controlled everything, and they've had their front people, which is the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Bilderbergs, etc. That's the face of it, if you like, that we can see. And for those people that don't even know about them, the front of them is the Soroses, the Gates, the Zuckerbergs of the world. They're what people can connect to as to the people who control the world. And in the old days, we used to refer to them as the Illuminati.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump has tried to put things in a language we can understand. So he's referred to them as the deep state, like he did with propaganda. Most people didn't know what the word propaganda meant, so he's just changed it to fake news so that normal people can understand what he's talking about. He's very, very good at making people understand the truth rather than lovely words that nobody's got a clue what it means.
Yes.
So they were taken out at the start, so that you had the Vatican that was emptied. When I say emptied, the cash, the gold, and moreover the documentation was taken out of that in April, May of last year. And that's all now under American control and has been moved away from Italy. The Phoenician families were all arrested then. The second phase was to take control of the Federal Reserve. Most people in America thought the Federal Reserve was owned by the government. It wasn't. It was a private company owned by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. But what he did was back that into the Federal Reserve, into the Treasury, sorry. And he moved in Judy Shelton in line because she's very much at the front of the gold standard. He wanted her to be in control of that, and that will come. This is all process at the moment, all in process. The third part is the City of London. What people don't realise is that these are all, the Vatican is Vatican City.
Mm-hmm.
Washington is Washington, D.C., which stands for District of Columbia. It's not part of the United States. And then you've got the City of London, which is not part of the United Kingdom. It's a separate entity. Mm-hmm. The City of London and the British royal family, that's why the Queen is no longer in Buckingham Palace. And of course, the mainstream media will say, oh, no, we're decorating. No, you're not decorating at all, I can assure you. You've been taken out of Buckingham Palace. And for those people who want a little poke up the backside to make them realise that what I'm telling you is the truth, Donald Trump is the first person in history to walk in front of the Queen, which is completely against the protocol, which is basically saying to the world, I'm in control now, you're not, for anybody who understands what's going on. She was removed from Buckingham Palace and she will never be going back there.
That kind of, dog, get away. That's the kind of statement that people are going to be going, yeah, this guy is crazy.
Yeah, you can take me as crazy. I have no problem with that. Take me as crazy. But then tell me why she's not been back there. And tell me why she's told her family it would be wise to get other properties. You have to look into the deeper thing. Also, the other thing, I laughed my head off at the Christmas speech, because anybody who's got any sight of insight knows that was a CGI, and that's why Channel 4 put out a spoof one a week before to distract the mind. It's called programming. The stupid one, oh, I'm happy to see the real one. The real one, if you look at it with a cynical eye, was nothing more than CGI. That wasn't a real video. That wasn't her in real life. I personally, and this is a Charlie thought, I personally don't think she's with us anymore. And I don't think Prince Philip is. That's my personal thought. I personally think that everything that's put out at the moment is either CGI or body doubles or something, but it's not the real person. The other thing with Prince Charles is, whether it's a body double or whatever, I don't know, but it doesn't even look close to the real thing. The biggest feature that Prince Charles has is big ears, and the ears they've got are completely wrong. I mean, you couldn't make it up. No, programmed, it's definitely him. I looked at him and I was like, do people really believe that's him? Because that looks nothing like him. And the one of the Queen at her Christmas speech, I was like, wow, you must have had some hydroxychloroquine or some Regeneron, because you look 20 years younger. You don't look in your 90s, girl. You look in your 70s. What's happened?
So, Charlie, a lot of this stuff would very much fit into the category of beyond huge, if true. It would be like so enormous that most people's, my mind included, minds would be absolutely blown. So
Correct.
how on earth, because people are going to be saying this is just like David Icke craziness, tinfoil hat, whatever. Yep. How do we anchor this? What can you show me to convince me that this is real?
Well, first of all, let's start at the beginning. Who's currently in Buckingham Palace?
I don't know.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. Nobody.
I mean, I wasn't even aware that the Queen wasn't there, to be honest. I just think she's old and she's got her own routine and she's probably going to be in wherever.
Well, when I first heard this, James, I was very much of the same view as you. It sounds completely ludicrous. Mm-hmm. So I started to do some research with people I know who work in the secret services in the UK. Mm-hmm. This is when I started to ask questions, and I was poking a bear that I shouldn't be poking. And they came back to me with, oh, she's gone to Balmoral. And very easy thing to say. But it doesn't take 2 minutes for me to find, I have some very, very good contacts. And the first place I contacted was the stables at Balmoral. Now, everybody who knows anything about the Queen knows that she loves horses more than she loves humans. Mm. And the stable hands hadn't seen her. So I knew I was up against a lie. I didn't have to go through the official office. I didn't have to go through the mainstream. I just simply had somebody contact who's in the horse world in that part of the world, contact another stable hand and said, is the Queen up with you? And of course they went, no, I haven't seen her for ages. And the
Mm,
first thing she does, and I know this factually, whenever she goes anywhere, because I've worked with Sheikh Mohammed in the Middle East, when he comes to London, the first thing he does is goes with her to see the horses, her horses. That's the
okay.
first thing they do because they both love horses. So if she went to Balmoral, there's absolutely no way that she would go there and not go and see the horses.
Okay, so the Queen thing seems to me, yeah, okay. It's a tiny part of this, but I tell you what interests. You can help me. I mean, I think what you're saying sounds absolutely crazy, but at the same time, something has really, really, really puzzled me more than I've ever been puzzled in my entire journalistic career, and that is this. I have never ever before seen a story or seen a story which has been so utterly misrepresented in the media as the story of the Donald Trump, the most recent presidential election.
Mm.
And the thing that really struck me was that even, well, in the run-up, the coverage throughout the conservative media was incredibly negative towards Trump. In fact, it was negative from the start of his presidency. I remember being a sort of at a premium in that people were ringing around trying to find people who were fans of Donald Trump to speak in various debates to represent the pro-Trump side because we were so few and far between. We were rare as hen's teeth. And that was odd because I thought, well, hang on a second. There is a gap between, an enormous gulf in the version of Donald Trump that I see presented on a regular basis in the media and the really quite impressive president that I see. And I couldn't understand it. And this has increased since, within, even though the election was disputed from the middle of the night onwards when the vote started changing, the media and the political class unanimously declared that this was a Biden victory, and Boris Johnson was one of the first to offer his congratulations and so on. And this I don't understand. I'm guessing, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I'm guessing that this massive globalist, if you like, the deep state, was acting in concert to destroy Donald Trump and his reputation because it knows that he is the kind of he is its enemy and he's going to destroy it. Is that roughly where we are?
That's smack on the money. Donald Trump will take down the deep state, the cabal. He'll take down corporate America. He already has, and restore the republic. And you have to understand that the mainstream media is only owned by 6 people worldwide. And they've all realised that their days are up. And the team around him have assured me that mainstream media will be the last people to be taken down. And he's just letting them expose themselves and show their hand. What's happening over the last few days is the last bits of the draining of the swamp, whether it be military leaders or what have you, or Republicans. It was made very clear to me, which I didn't believe at the start, that when he drains the swamp, 95% of Congress and the houses in America will be gone. And that wouldn't at all surprise me with the British government either, that when you drain the swamp, 95%, if not more. And I've often thought when I've had roundtable discussions regarding the new structure in the United Kingdom under Nasara, as to how many people you'd actually need in politics. At the moment, you've got 600 and whatever, 50 members of parliament. The reality is you probably need 30 or 40 at the most. The House of Lords doesn't need to exist. You need a dozen good lawmakers. And I think the way the structure will go is they'll move away from London, probably near Northamptonshire, somewhere in the Midlands, and control it that way. And each county in the United Kingdom, each state in America will have a representative, and hopefully you won't choose it from a political swamp, but from you've got so many talented men and women in England that have run businesses that could run a county for fun and actually care for the people rather than this obsession of working for the deep state, because it's all funded by big tech and big pharma. I mean, the corruption in those levels is off the scale, and it comes into where the money is. Follow the money, and if you've got money, bribery and corruption, they've wheedled their way in, and they've controlled everyone by money. I had a wonderful interview 2 weeks ago with Jennifer Arcuri, who was very close
Boris's
friends.
old squeeze.
And I've got an hour and a half video with all the truth in there, with everything in there. She's been offered £3 million for that story, and she won't give it to them because she knows that they won't deliver it accurately. And I told her I'll put it out unedited when she's ready. But at the moment we've stored it, and it's the evidence in there about many, many politicians is absolutely mind-blowing, and it will cause absolute tidal waves throughout Parliament with the information that she's given me. And I've verified a lot of it, and I know it to be accurate. I had very, very close connections many, many years ago when I was working with the British government, or working with Michael Howard, who was Home Secretary at the time, and Michael Forsyth was the governor, the Minister for Prisons, when Derek Lewis was the Director General, when I was doing the security of prisons in the UK. So I know how the inner workings of Parliament work, and how, and I'm sure you've been in the Houses of Parliament and the bars and what have
Yes.
you, and it has a very unique feel. Let's put it that way.
But let's just take a step back for a moment. I mean, lots of my university contemporaries have become MPs, including two of them have become Prime Minister. And the friends that went into politics, I imagine, were motivated by high principle. They wanted to make the world a better place. They wanted to, they wanted to make a difference. And I've seen them become corrupted by the system or whatever. But I suppose what I'm saying is, did Boris Johnson really set out to become the creature he is today? Did Matt Hancock, he's become a tyrant. But so what happens? How do you explain this?
It's the swamp. When you're in the swamp, you become contaminated. Doesn't matter how good your wetsuit is, you become contaminated by the surroundings that you're in. I've likened it in life. You have to see what's inside you to start with, because I've often said it's the same boiling water that hardens an egg, that softens a potato. It's what's inside you that counts. And some of these people, you have to question what's inside them from day one. Are they in it for themselves? One of the biggest things I've noticed is the amount of flip-flopping, especially in America, with senators. And you see it in England. And I look back in my life at British politicians. I don't have to agree with them. But Tony Benn stood up for what he believed in. Everyone hated him for doing that. And I was one person that I looked at him. I was on the conservative side, but I looked at him and I fell in love with the man because he stood up for what he believed in. And so many people just don't do that. They capitulate far too easy. And you see them go in with all good intentions. I want to change the world and I want to do the right thing. And then suddenly they change, and it comes down to whether big pharma has got hold of them, whether it's big tech that's got hold of them. Somebody's got hold of them, and it's all too easy. And one of the biggest reasons, I think, James, is that our politicians are grossly underpaid, and they're far too easy to bribe. Far too easy. With respect, you could offer them £500,000 and they'll jump on your ship all day long. Because their salaries are so poor. If you're going to be running a country, it's a major job. Or unless you're like Trump, that you get a businessman that runs it, doesn't need to be paid. even better, because then you can't be bribed. That's where the biggest
Yes.
change.
Yes.
And there's plenty
So
of businessmen and women in England that would do it for nothing and could do a 10 times better job. And that takes the bribery out of it.
now, unlike a lot, in fact, unlike pretty much every journalist in the UK at the moment, I'm not really preoccupied with what's going on in my own country, even though I can see that the whole COVID craziness is just extraordinary. We can go into why I think it's so corrupt and wrong in a moment, but the reason I'm focused on America and what's happening in America is that I see Trump as the magic bullet. And from my researches down the rabbit hole, this is what I've gathered. That, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but the senior generals were so appalled by the direction that Obama was taking America in that they were considering having some kind of coup, and that Donald Trump persuaded them, no, I will be your point man. I will go in there and I will make it right. And so the senior military had his back. Although there are bits that don't fit into this theory. For example, look at some of Trump's picks in his first administration. Mad Dog Mattis. You know, there are lots of senior generals who are part of the military-industrial complex who don't like Trump because he's against wars. And they want wars. They need wars because that's where their defense contracts come in, their backhanders and so on. So that sort of slightly worries me. You know, how many generals actually are on his side. But just continuing with what I think has happened, that he went in with a 2-term plan, and the first term was spent largely fighting off the first impeachment and the Russiagate scandal, which was completely fake news, as he would put it, and in which MI6 was involved.
Very much.
The whole thing about prostitutes urination was but that his first presidency, although the conventional version of events is there was Donald Trump doing his things like you know, dealing with Rocket Man in North Korea and just doing sort of normal presidential things. That really his main task was draining the swamp, and that this is his ultimate game plan. Is that right?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And one thing that a lot of people have overlooked is that the Corporation of the United States of America was dissolved in June 2019, as was the Corporation of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. The corporations were all dissolved. So
But where? By whom? How?
In Companies House in London. They were all closed down in London in Companies House. You can go onto the Companies House and find all of the details of the corporations that were all dissolved in June 2019. It's all there.
Right.
So it's all, you can go through it all there. And it was very cleverly set up. There was shells set up in shells, and it doesn't take too long to uncover it all as to how the corporation was set up. So the reality...
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
If all this amazing shit has been going on, like, for example, the arrest of the head of Phoenician, whatever. What about this?
Sorry?
Why is why isn't this being written out or in there?
Well, they're desperate to stop the news coming out. The mainstream media know what's going on, and they're the top boys, not the journalists. A lot of the journalists aren't, but they haven't been digging because they've been told not to dig. And
so the proprietors we're talking about?
The proprietors have told them not to go down this line, so it's filtered down. And I've spoken to 2 people who've been told specifically to keep away from that subject, not even to go there. They've been told not to investigate.
Right.
So it's coming top down. Don't get involved in this. Don't look into this. So this was all done. This has all been manufactured for the financial reset. And the other thing that's very interesting in London is that the Bank of England was shut down when they were transitioning the old system to the new system for 2 or 3 weeks. Nobody mentioned, you would have thought some journalists would have picked up on the fact the Bank of England was shut. Not one journalist picked up on it. And I was putting it out there, and I had people contact the Bank of England and go down there and confirm that it was closed.
So can I ask you, because I think a lot of us are, I mean, every night I go to bed now, I've got a knot in my stomach, I've got acid. I think, you know, there's at least 74 million voters in America who are feeling this way. And I think there's a lot of people in the UK and the rest of the free-ish world who are, you know, they're not, you don't see them represented in the mainstream media, but behind the scenes, they're all praying and pinning their faith on that Trump's got their back, and that they understand that this is the way forward. Are you saying that we can just trust God and trust Trump, that we needn't be eaten up with worry? Is it, you know, because I mean the other side are quite cunning, and
they're very, very cunning. I wouldn't put it just trust God. I think it's very important to trust God and to trust Trump to do God's work. I think that's very, very important. I think we've got away from that. Our moral compass has been out of sync. I don't think you've got anything to worry about. I think the mainstream media and the governments are trying to create fear, because the research that I've done shows very, very clearly, and this is something that your viewers can research, the coronavirus COVID-19 was patented in 2018 at the Pirbright Institute in Surrey. For anybody that wants to do any research, you'll find out the word Pirbright is the middle name of Rothschild. So it's his institute, and it was also signed off unusually quickly by the Queen in 2018, the patent for coronavirus COVID-19. So it was a man-made virus. So you can class that as a bioweapon, which Trump knows about. It went over to Wuhan, to the laboratory. It was taken over there. And of course, you have to look at Wuhan. It may well be in China, but it was completely funded by Dr. Fauci and George Soros, completely. So when you start establishing these facts, you start to go, hang on a sec, England's complicit. It's very easy to point at China, and I work very closely with the Chinese, but I work very closely with the Dragon family, the Himalayan descent, rather than the CCP. The CCP is being removed out of China, the Communist Party. And the old Chinese, the Himalayan descent, will take over, and it will be a People's Republic or a Republic of China, which will be the future. The CCP at the moment are fighting like dogs because they've had control of China for many, many years, and Trump is removing their power.
Well, I mean, certainly I've seen today President Xi has put China on a war. Is that a response perhaps to what's going on?
Well, again, the mainstream media haven't published the fact that he's delisted over 200 Chinese companies off the American Stock Exchange, and that will make them angry. You know, Alibaba has gone, Huawei has gone, three Chinese dam companies gone. The big, anything that's CCP backed has been removed from the US Stock Exchange, and he's put the document out there, but the mainstream media has chosen not to mention that. That's massive, massive news. I'll send you the executive order that he's done. Again,
I've read the executive order, and I've looked up the details of the companies that. I mean, this is what we do, isn't it?
Yeah.
We down the rabbit hole. We spend a lot of time sort of following these links.
Well, James, I give you a lot of credit because it's not what we do at all. It's what you're doing. There's a lot of people who are not doing what you're doing,
Right.
Establishing the truth. And I respect you in England as being probably one of the very, very few that is establishing the truth rather than what the narrative is. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
but the thing, here's the thing. I can barely write about this stuff. I mean, I've got the places that, for example, ever since I lost my regular column, I'm allowed to do TV by the Spectator. I'm still really, really puzzled as to why. Well, I'm not, given that what we've just been discussing, but I was really shocked when I lost my column on the Spectator, because I thought, I'm just the master of the 1,000-word essay, and loads of readers like my stuff.
Yeah.
But it's clear that somewhere someone was leaned on, I think. I mean, it could just be a personal thing. It could just be that the management don't like me. But I just got the vibe that somebody somewhere leaned on them, that we don't want this guy. Is that paranoia?
No, it's bang on the money. It's bang on the money, because I've been leaned on many, many times on my journey. And the trouble is I've just said, no, I'm going to get the truth out, whether you like it or not. And they've gone, well, what you're putting out is a load of rubbish. And I said, to you it is. To me, it's my truth. It's as simple as that.
That's the thing. I really don't mind. I don't mind people thinking I'm a tinfoil hat crazy. All I care about is that I am able to present an argument with supporting evidence, and that this gets out there. And people can then judge whether I'm a complete fucking fruitcake or not. I just, it doesn't bother me. People can think of me what they like.
Exactly.
But we seem to be living in times where I'm not even allowed to say what I want to say anymore. Or certainly the outlets I can say these things is diminishing, to the point where I'm pretty much limited to my sort of Patreons and my podcasts and things like that.
Mm-hmm. It is. I didn't plan this at all. It just happened. It's organic. It's happened. The numbers have surprised me at the amount of people. The following that I've got is incredible.
Wait, so how many followers have you got?
We passed 8 million yesterday.
What?
We passed 8 million yesterday.
Charlie, my goodness.
And the support that I've had is unbelievable. I also have an insider club, which we do 2 chats a week, one on Wednesdays and one on Saturdays, where I talk to all of the group, and they can ask me any questions. And what I try and do is provide evidence of where everything is, where the information is, because it's being hidden. One thing I will point out to you, which will be a bit of fun for you to investigate, all the statistics for COVID come out of Dominion in Canada. I'll give you that little gold nugget.
But I thought it was the ONS and stuff which were coming up with this.
The figures, and this, you can investigate this for yourself, and you'll find it out for yourself. The British government pay Dominion to provide the ONS with the figures.
That is interesting, very interesting, if true. Tell me, because
then you can help me, because I've done my research and found that to be true, and now I'll be over the moon for you to do exactly the same thing.
Okay, I'll have a look at that. So, as I say, I'm a novice down the rabbit hole, and I'm just not sure how much to believe about, or whom to believe. So tell me, for example, about QAnon. Is that a real thing, or is that a crazy conspiracy theory?
The Q that I've got here has got nothing to do with QAnon. That's all to do with the quantum financial system, gold-backed. Q was something that I came into contact on my journey. I've done my research on Q, as Q and Anons are 2 separate things. They get lumped.
What does Q stand for? Is it quantum?
No. Well, for me it does, because I'm involved in the quantum financial system, which is backed by gold.
Yeah.
But people misinterpret that as being QAnon. It's not.
Right.
When I started my journey of investigation, somebody led me to Q, and the first thing I did was research Q. And I researched it all the way back to the fact that I found it back to 1962 with John F. Kennedy. And I've since learned that it went back way, way, way beyond that. And basically what it is a group of insiders close to the president. It started off with John F. Kennedy. That I found it went back to a previous president. where they felt that their lives were being threatened, and they had a group of associates close to them. They told information, said, look, if anything happens to me, this is get this information out. So that's where the origins of Q came. In 4 years ago, it came back to the head. It became public again, and it was putting out information about what was going to happen. And whether you like them or don't like them, everything they've said so far has happened. And for me, it was all it was, James, was a point of cross-reference. What I've been told physically, I could cross-reference with Q, and it seemed to match. So it gave me another point of reference. That's all. And I try and get 3 points of reference. It's an old thing, but I use my normal source. I've used Q, and the most important one is I use God. I speak to him and ask him, and ask spiritualists, is this information I'm getting accurate, or is it a load of old baloney? And I trust my intuition on the information I'm getting, verifying it with different aspects, because I can't trust the mainstream media. So I'm having to look in different places. And so far, everything they've told me has been right so far. The only thing that they've been slightly amiss with, and they told me they did it on purpose, was they gave me some inaccurate dates just to see how much impact it had as a distraction, because the art of war is create chaos over here while we do something over here.
When you say they, your contacts within
I've got 3 or 4 contacts that are at ambassador level in the US government.
Yeah.
I'm in contact with, that I've known for the best part of 20 years. These are people that I trust. They don't give a lot of information away. It's very much yes, no answers. We have a separate way of communicating other than mainstream connection.
Yeah.
That I won't disclose, but we have a way of communicating that I can ask questions and they give me information and guidance as to where to be looking. I also have direct access to 3 of the 4 lawyers that Trump has, Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood. I've also got access to General Flynn and General McInerney. These people give me very, very accurate information. I've got a number of people on the ground that work for Trump or have worked for Trump. Mel K, who's worked for him for 20 years, goes to the same church on Sunday, so knows the family as a family. Anne van der Steel, who's known the family for years and years and has direct contact. And that's very important to me, to talk to people who are direct. And then what I do is I get all of the information and I trust my intuition, and then I trust God to guide me to deliver that information as accurately as I can. Yeah, it still has a bit of the Charlie personality added to it. That's human nature. I don't want to be a robot. I still want to remain Charlie, and have a bit of humor with it, because at the moment people are suffering. They need a bit of humor.
They certainly do, and they also need a degree of reassurance, because I think a lot of people are feeling frustrated that they can't see the thing that they want to happening, and they're thinking, for example, let me give you an example of the kind of things that are troubling me. Trump, in his first administration, seems to have picked a lot of people who were turned out to be, at best, disappointments, at worst, traitors. So, who was his first Secretary of State? Rex Tillerson. Absolutely swamp creature through and through. Mike Pence. I'm presuming he is a wrong, and that this is not a kind of double or treble agent game being played. Why would you choose as your vice president? But if you are so good at 5D chess, why would you surround yourself with people who are going to stab you in the back?
It's the old philosophy, isn't it? You keep your friends close and your enemies even closer. And I think one thing that was said to me back in April of last year was he wasn't going to expose people. He was going to let them do it themselves. And that is the art of war, is to allow them to expose themselves. Because if he was to do it, people wouldn't believe it and wouldn't like it. He's having to let every single one of them expose themselves. And the other thing that's interesting is we've got so used to instant answers. We've got instant messaging. We've got 24-hour day news. In the old days, if I wanted to contact you, James. I'd write to you from Spain. It would probably take a week to get to you. It'd take you a couple of days to answer. It would take you 14 days for me to get an answer, and we would accept that. Nowadays, we want an answer immediately. We always want everything now, 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 now. And that's the world that we've come into. Now, right now, I'm as calm and patient as I've ever been. I've got a peace inside me that I've never, ever known. I know the destination. I just don't know the journey. For some reason, Trump at the last minute has taken us down the dirt path with a real bumpy road. But I just, he's driving the car and he's going to bring us through. And I have 100% confidence in him without any question.
That's, let me just ask you a couple of personal questions. Where are you on Bitcoin?
On Bitcoin, I'm just very old-fashioned, James. I prefer gold and silver. With Bitcoin, I know factually, that, from my experience with what I've worked with, it's used a lot by the deep state and the cabals.
Yes.
I know it's the easiest way to get anything into South America, and it's not all for coffee. And it's also used by Iran and North Korea a lot to get what they need. So that just tells me, be careful. I did a Zoom yesterday with Scott, who was explaining the differences between the different currencies and what he thought was good and what he thought was bad. For me, it's all completely different. I'm a 60-year-old bloke who likes pounds, shillings and pence, still.
Yes. But I mean, if you're talking about a new gold-backed currency, which I know has been floated by kind of sort of anarcho-capitalists, if you like, for quite some time, but a lot of people sort of ain't never gonna happen. I mean, that would be tremendous. It would be good for gold, wouldn't it? I mean, gold's going to go up.
Yeah, gold will go up. It's being artificially suppressed a lot at the moment. The new quantum financial system will be in operation very, 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 very soon. It actually got activated in August of last year. And at the moment, we're in a transition from the SWIFT system to the quantum system. And what they're doing is they're moving the instruments that were on the SWIFT system across. And what they're doing is making sure that they don't move dirty money across. So everything is being done very carefully so that the new SWIFT, the new quantum system is not contaminated with dirty money. Anything that's dirty on there will be seized and obviously become the property of the United States.
So will things like sterling still exist, or will we have a range of currencies, fiat currencies, or?
The old fiat currencies will disappear. We'll have new currencies backed by gold. And we'll have a new pound that's backed by gold. We won't notice any difference other than it'll probably look slightly different. It'll start with a new 20 or a new 50 pound note or whatever it is. There'll be a new note and new coins coming in bit by bit. It'll be phased in very, very gently so it doesn't cause waves. The same with the American dollar. I've seen the new US, it's not a USD, it's a USN, it's a US note and a US coin, they refer to it. That's already in place. It's just a question of when the transition is and when it becomes public. It's all being managed very carefully, but if you can imagine, it's highly, highly sensitive right now because you're taking away all of the power from the cabal and the deep state, and they don't take nicely to it. So they're having to do it carefully so that there's not any collateral damage, for the want of a better word.
When you say they, okay, so let's call them the white hats, for want of a better phrase. One has to assume that Trump has quite a lot of white hats working for him because he couldn't do it on his own.
Correct.
I mean, what about in other countries? What about the UK, for example? Because I mean, I'm looking at our current regime, in fact, our entire political class, and I'm thinking these people are they're as bad as the swamp in America.
Yeah, he has that all under control. He's visited every single country, or his team have already, and they've already identified people to transition the UK from a point of view of politically, from a point of view of the military, from a point of view of the police, from law and order. They've already identified people in every single country in the world to transition So the groundwork has been done over the last 3 years to find the right people in place to manage the transition.
But I mean, an operation like that, you'd never keep that secret.
It seems to be kept very, very secret, doesn't it?
Well, well, I suppose, yeah, except in forums like this one, where I suppose people are just going to be going, yeah, but he's just too bloody crazy. It's just
But I don't mind
away.
people saying that. I don't mind people saying that at all, because as I've said many, many times, time will tell.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what I see right now, and what I do have privileged information. There's a lot I can talk about. There's a lot I can't.
Yes.
The information I have tells me not to worry. Things will be absolutely fine, but we're going through a very, very difficult phase right now. The transition will not be easy, and my job is only just beginning, because when we start to transition, I know what it feels like when you come out into the real world and you realize that everything you've been told is not true. That's not very nice. It took me 2.5 years, James, to find my feet.
Yeah, but it's quite exciting as well.
It was
You've got
very,
to admit.
it was very exciting, but it was incredibly scary because I didn't know who I could trust anymore, because my parents had misled me. I use the word misled because I think they were misled. I don't think they lied to me on purpose. I think they were misled. And I think when you have to trust your intuition. And that's when you can only do that if your moral compass is accurate. So you have to go through the process of resetting your moral compass. Um, that's actually quite exciting, because you start to connect to yourself rather than being a robot, being programmed. You start to trust
Yes.
yourself. And you start with little things as to what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad. That's where you start off from. And it's a period of growth, and it's an amazing journey.
How will ordinary people be affected? For example, will they experience poverty or disruption to their financial lives? Or are they going to be okay?
Everybody will be okay when we get through this, because we won't be slaves to debt anymore. And what I see is when this happens, when the removal of the current fiat system, you take away everybody's debt, you take away everybody's mortgage, you take away everybody's loans. Things change.
Well, hang on a second. I mean, if it seems to me that when I buy a house that I pay and I pay interest on the loan, because otherwise how would you get the capital in order to buy a house, for example? And you're saying that there's going to be a debt write-off. I mean, surely I should be piling into a mortgage now, given that it's going to be a few months' time.
Well, I wouldn't recommend anybody to do that, because I just find that morally wrong that you do,
Yeah.
that you want to do that. I think if you've been enslaved to debt all your life, you'll be very grateful to get rid of it, the millstone that's around your neck. And I've never recommended anybody go out and borrow loads of money just to be forgiven. That's a bit like going out and saying, oh, if Jesus is going to forgive me, I can go out killing people. It's not the right way.
Okay. So removing the moral element for a moment. I mean, the companies that are the mortgage lenders, they are, it seems to be reasonable that people should be able to make profit from lending money. You know, that's otherwise I don't see how.
Why would you see that as being fair? If the money's corrupted and is only just printed, it has no value, then the whole system is corrupted, because at the moment the system itself, they just print money that doesn't cost anything, has no value, and they want it back with interest. That's morally wrong. If something has a value, then you have a different issue.
Yes, but look, one of the I agree about money printing and stuff, but surely one of the basic principles of, I mean, if you believe in free markets, for example, say, okay, but let me give you an example from companies. You know, I've invested in startups.
Mm-hmm.
I've given them a certain amount of money
Mm-hmm.
in the hope that that money I've lent to them will be returned to me multiples of what I initially did. Risk,
Mm-hmm.
fair enough, with my capital.
Mm-hmm.
They needed my money, but I'm So how would that relation work in this new paradigm?
Um, I think when we get away from being a slave to money and we start looking at humanitarian sides of doing it for the right reasons, the instead of just accumulating more money, which we've all become obsessed with, I've lost that interest in being obsessed with money. My obsession now is being able to help other people in a way, rather than seeing how much I can accumulate, to see how much I can help other people. And just as an example, this last Christmas, I got far more satisfaction out of going to feed the homeless people in Malaga than I'd ever make out of investing into a startup. I got so much joy out of people who had nothing. And then the next step will be to provide them education, to take them away from poverty and to try and bring them a quality of life where that they, you know, every single human being has a right to quality of life. And we've disregarded that. You know, the United Kingdom has a massive problem with homeless people, and yet it claims to be a world leader. We're in the 21st century, and we've still got people without homes. We've still got old people I think the UK itself has lost its moral compass when it comes to old people. You know, you go to the Far East and you don't put old people in an old people's home. In England, everybody rushes the minute you hit 70, stick them in an old people's home. Right now,
Sure.
we need our old people around us to guide us through this difficult period. And they've been through the Second
Sure.
World War, and they know what hardship is. The Second World War was 5.5 years of hardship, of food tokens, of hiding under the bed when the air raid sirens go up. And we're worried about being locked in our houses for a couple of days.
Sure. No, Charlie, I agree with everything you say there, but it seems to me that you're ducking a point, or
Go on.
you've lost me slightly.
No, all right.
Well,
Okay.
it's
To do with the
this
investment side.
that yeah. I mean, never mind the personal level of, you know, should people want money? Is that a desirable thing? It is an absolute basic fact, you know. I mean, it's human instinct that you need incentives. If you're going to risk your capital, you need incentives to provide it for other people, and that's a good thing. I mean, economic growth is a good thing. You know, you're not going to tell me that you're a green and that you think that actually we need some kind of degrowth.
No, far from.
So
I think we need a different perspective. No, I think that there's an awful lot of room for us, for people who have more than enough to help other people to be able to do that. The question I have is, I think we've been so far, yes, you want to increase your position 100%, but being driven by greed is not a good thing. To be driven by humanity is a better thing. And I've never ever worried, I've never worried about money. Because of the simple fact that I know that life is like a sausage machine. If I put it in here, it comes out there. The more I put in there, the more it comes out there. Sometimes you get lucky. You put in a little bit here and lots comes out there. This is part of life. But I've never been obsessed by money. I've just learned that hard work, I've come from a hard-working family of hard graft. The more you put in, the more you get out. And the more you can help people. I agree with that. But I think we've become absolutely driven, and I find it. I think we're changing in the way. I think we get far more out of life when we can help people for the right reasons, rather than just taking money out of the system. I was asked the other day by a friend of mine who's got a lot of money. He said, "Charlie, what do I do with it?" And I said, "Well, I wouldn't leave it in the bank." He used to be a builder. He's 70, 80 years older. And I said, "Do you know what I would do with your money? Put half of it into gold, and the other half, I'd find a 19, 20-year-old builder, and I'd say to him, look, I'll give you the money. You don't need to go to the
I think you're about to say 90-year-old girl.
19-year-old builder. And I'll tell you what, with all my expertise of 50 years of building, I'll lend you the money, interest-free, or with a little bit of interest. We'll make some money when you sell the house, or you give me a percentage of the house, whatever. But I'll also be there because it will mentally stimulate him. And
Yeah.
now he's got about 20 builders that he's helping out, and he's helping them out. He's also using his expertise of an 80-year-old man and is keeping him alive and keeping him young, and he's enjoying his money. Whereas if he'd left it in the bank, he gets nothing out of it. And those sort of things I find very attractive, that, he can go to them and say, and the other thing he did, which was very, very interesting, it was cheeky, but it was interesting. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll lend you the money at 1% a month. He said, I've never known boys build houses so quickly. He said, they work 24 hours a day because they don't want to borrow the money for more than 2 months. It only costs them 2%. And he said, I'm making really good money, and they're borrowing more and more and more. But he said, I'm getting a massive return.
But that's good. You see, that sounds to be sensible free market economics in action, and I'm with you on that. I can't quite buy your thing. Just because you're at peace with your financial situation and the moral dimension to your life, it's a natural human instinct to want a better life for your children than you had yourself.
Yes.
And sometimes, and you need money for that, and you're not necessarily going to get it from your salary. So
you do, but I think with children, you and I always want to look after our children. We look after them too well, and I think I've learned with my children, teach them to give them the first rung of the ladder, i.e. a deposit, and then teach them how to turn £1 into £2. Any more than that, you spoil them, and they don't learn how to fight how we've had to fight. And I think we all need to learn how to survive, and how to fight to survive, and to do it with the right spirit. And the obsession that we have to have mountains and mountains and mountains of money. There's a very fine line between not having enough and having too much. If you have too much, you become at risk because everybody's after you. If you don't have enough,
I know, I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that totally. Yeah. But people watching this are going to be thinking, well, we can call it the awakening, and that sounds great, but we're going to get there's going to be some chaos on the way. So people shouldn't have their money in banks right now, you think?
Me personally, I don't think you should. I don't think you should have it in the bank. There's a very simple reason, because there's no interest in the bank. Why would you leave it there?
Well, yeah, indeed.
When you consider that gold has returned 10% per year for the last 10 years,
yeah,
that makes a lot more sense to me. If you want to have a little bit of fun, there's plenty of cryptocurrencies to have fun. I don't know any of them that are brilliant and any of them are bad. That's a personal choice, and you can take your own advice. If you can help other people and you can gain both of you out of it, then brilliant. As I said, with the builder, he's gained so much from himself. It's taken 20 years of his life, because he's come back to life again. He's thinking for himself again about building and helping somebody else. That experience is valuable. You can't buy that. You get it for nothing.
So just going back to the to repeat what I earlier on, I have become totally obsessed with the fortunes of Donald Trump, because the way I see it, this is the magic bullet which is going to stop the nonsense with the masks, with the quarantines, with the self-isolation. All this nonsense is completely artificial, and
yep.
Because I know a lot of people are going to have difficulty with it. The only plausible explanation is deliberate, and I'll give you one example of this. The fact that as we know that there was the virus is real. So it peaked in March last year. What we're experiencing now is a kind of the natural sort of second wave is how they're describing it. It's the natural kind of smaller hump you get in the winter season. And in order to cover us all, what they're doing, they've redesignated it so that by 28 days of a COVID test, but within 60 days of the COVID test, as a question, what possible reason would they have to do that unless they wanted to ramp up the fear?
That's all.
So yes, yeah. it can be the only explanation. There is no other logical reason for it because it's dishonest.
The other thing, of course, is anybody who's done an ounce of research knows that you can't transmit a virus. Physically impossible.
Meaning what? Sorry.
Well, you and I can transmit germs.
Right.
But we're not scared of germs. We've got used to them. Our body's made of 1 trillion viruses. You can't transmit a virus. The reason they've used the word virus is very obvious to me. It's created by Bill Gates because a virus in a computer is very scary because it can go all through your computer. It can dissolve it. But in human beings, you and I can't transmit viruses. We can transmit germs. So the fact they've used that is the first lie.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, suppose you had coronavirus and you were living with me.
Just for the
chances
record,
are
we both have coronavirus in our systems. It's in our DNA.
Well, earlier versions of maybe.
Yeah.
Not the new version.
No, but corona,
But,
COVID-19, probably COVID-17 or whatever it is.
yeah.
No
So like you and I are living together, very comfortably in our lovely house in Spain. Chances are you're going to get it, aren't you? I mean, how's that going to be?
It's a common cold.
Get it if not transmitted.
Go onto the CDC website and the WHO website, and it's very, very clear. It's nothing more than the common cold. If I'm in your house and I've got a cold, there's a chance you're going to get it. And one thing you don't do if you've got a common cold is go around and see old people because you know that they're going to get it, and they're not. You know, it's not going to do them a lot of good when they're old to get a cold because it can kill them. But it's nothing more than the common cold. But it's been blown out of proportion by the media because this is all part of the smokescreen to collapse the world's economy.
Well, so look, some of the stuff as we've established, I'm a bit wary of what you're saying. I think that's only proper because otherwise I'm going like a complete dick, aren't I? If I'm a guy who sits on the internet talking to other people and buys everything they say instantly. But I do agree with you. I mean, or rather, I might invite you to agree with me that Donald Trump is the only way we're going to get out of this because I can't see any other way. I mean, already we're creating a path for a world in which every new virus that comes along, the government has the excuse to shut us down and force us to wear masks in homes again, which is untenable.
Yeah.
It's not living when you did live in.
No, it's Donald Trump will win this battle without. He's already won the battle. At the moment, we're just seeing the pantomime, but the battle's already won. We're just seeing him drain the last pieces of the swamp, making sure they get every single piece out.
I do hope you're right, Charlie.
I'm going to have to stop it here. I'd love to continue this another time, James.
No, listen, I know how busy you are.
I've got another.
It's been fantastic.
10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm flat out, but I'd love to do another one with you because I love your cynicism and the way of questioning is constructive, and I have no problem with that.
I've got an inquiring mind.
I don't mind that at all because it's my truth, and I don't mind being challenged on it because I want to establish maybe not everything I've got is accurate, and you and I between us we can establish the truth.
Yeah.
And the more people we get together, the more truth we'll find because we're not going to find it another way.
No.